My name's Randy Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast. At Mastermind Parenting, we're on a mission to support strong-willed kids and the families that love them. Well, hi, everyone. I have an exciting topic this week. Might not sound exciting, but it's something that we're all dealing with. I'm here with Titania Jordan. She's the CMO and Chief Parent Officer of internet safety company Bark Technologies. If you haven't heard of Bark, you might be, well, if you have teenagers or kids with devices, if you haven't heard of Bark, you might be sleeping under a rock, but we're going to wake you up now. And she's written a new book, Parental Control, A Guide to Raising Balanced Kids in the Digital Era. Her first book, Parenting in a Tech World, was published in 2020. Timely. I mean, was that a coincidence that...
I think it was a God thing, but no, we did not plan. We did not plan to release that book in conjunction with the pandemic, but here we are.
And it became a bestseller. Yeah, duh. We all know what we were dealing with during the pandemic. And I know what it takes. Like, you don't just write a book and then release it. So that was you were working on that book before COVID was happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
at that time, gosh, 2020. So my son was 11 at that time, and we were in the thick of it. All of his friends had unsafe smartphones. So many of them already had Snapchat, which is crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was wanting all those things, and working at a tech company that helps to protect over 7.4 million children across the nation, and being a social media native myself, I love Instagram personally. I was struggling with what's the right thing to do for my child. And if I was struggling, I figured every parent out there was probably struggling. So let's get some answers and figure this out together. And then since then, so much has happened, right? Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, has really changed the course of the smartphone-based childhood, thankfully. And this new book was time. It was time. Tech moves fast. A lot has happened since then, and we needed to give parents an update.
Yeah, I am so glad you brought up Jonathan Haidt's book. Because I was just talking, this is a topic that I talk to parents about every single day. And just today, I had a group of parents of tweens and teens talking about this exact topic. And I thought, we're all struggling with this. And the thing is that I said to them, I said, look, I've been talking about these phones and these devices that, comparing them to drugs for a long
Yes.
time,
Yes.
years and years and years. And now I said, and now Jonathan Haidt has brought that language and all the evidence to the mainstream. And he's just making life a little bit easier for those of us who do want to do everything in our power to help our kids have a handle on this, to not let the devices take over their brains, to try and be responsible about this. Our kids, of course, they want all the things because they're kids, and they want everything that their friends are having. But when you're the only parent, like I was, and it sounds like you were in your community, and your kid is feeling left out and other, and especially during a time where it's like the opposite of what we want to do for them. Like, it's already a time, the tween and teen years, where they're going to feel like, do I belong? Like, are my friends going to be my friends today? And so, to have all these rules around this device that the kids are all using and all communicating on, you feel like you're the villain and you're just trying to be the responsible parent. And I feel like now, at least Jonathan Haidt bringing it to the mainstream, it makes all of our jobs easier, because you're not going to be the only one. Chances are there's going to be at least another family or two. And so
100%. I'm so grateful for him and what he's done and how he's helped to empower parents to say, look, this isn't opinion, this is fact, that X, Y, and Z is not healthy for children. And so what are we going to do as responsible adults who are charged with their physical and mental health? We're going to make better choices, period. And so many children, my child included, really pulls that lever of but I'm the only one and I don't want to be left out. And no parent wants their kid to be left out. And then what I'm here to tell you today and moving forward is you actually do want your child to be left out of the bullying, of the graphic, violent, and sexual content, of the disordered eating related content, of the mental health issues and the addictive algorithms, of the lack of sleep, of the comparison trap. You mentioned earlier, in that space of the tween and teen years, children are looking for that sense of belonging. Where do I fit in? I just want to be accepted. And because that there's that overage into social media now, not just in real life, they want to be included and accepted there too. And it is not easy.
It's not easy. Well,
No.
okay, so first, will you give us sort of the the overhead view of bark
Yes.
and what bark is and why you guys started it? And yeah, I want to know a little bit more about the origin story there.
Absolutely. So I wish I could take full credit for starting Bark Technologies. I cannot. This company was started by Brian Basin. He's our CEO and a dad of two, and he was actually working at Twitter at the time. Twitter had acquired his previous company, which worked with influencers, ironically enough. And so he was super tech savvy, engineering, scientific mind, working at one of the largest social media platforms. And his oldest son, it became time for him to have access to an internet connected device. And when Brian looked at the landscape of parental controls and filters, he was like, this is not good. This is not good. There are no good options. And he took a big risk and he left Twitter to start Bark, hired me, hired our CTO, Brandon Hilkert, also a dad of two, and a few other key team members. And we got started using artificial intelligence to help analyze children's connected tech, their digital signal, their text, their email, their social media conversations, their photos, their videos, all of that. And going deep with AI, we were able to pull out areas of danger and problems that parents needed to know about. And when we first were really taking off, we were hearing back from parents. And in fact, I'm trying to remember the stat because it was a decade ago, but I would say over 50% of parents who got Bark at the time, which was just an app at the time, were getting Bark alerts for things happening on their children's devices. And 80% of the time, with regards to those alerts, they had no idea that their child was encountering this issue. And that was an eye opener. From there, we started with an app that would connect. Uh, Parents wanted more, understandably. They're like, we don't want to have to use Bark and X, Y, and Z. Can you offer filters for us? Can you help us set time limits? Can you help us keep the tech in our home safer, whether it's gaming consoles or smart TVs? So we launched the Bark Home, a physical device that would go in the home that would help with all of that. And even like when friends would come over with their devices, you could connect their devices and help to regulate that. We then launched a safer smartphone for kids called the Bark Phone because a lot of people don't realize that Apple is not a great first smartphone for children. Great for adults, not for kids. And then most recently, we launched a safer smartwatch for kids because, again, a lot of parents will give their kids Apple Watches thinking it's a dumbed down thing, but it can still access text, gaming, social media, the internet, and sometimes you might not want that. So that's a little bit, a little bit about Bark.
And how, like, if you had, because I asked a couple of my members who has used Bark,
Hmm.
and a mom of teenagers, she said, well, I tried to, but I think it was years and years ago.
Hmm.
And she said at the time her kids were, and it was before she was working with me, she said that her kids were too savvy. And
Ah.
yeah. So, like, what would you say in terms of if people have maybe used an earlier iteration of
Hmm.
Bark and the Bark of 2025?
Hmm.
How have y'all rectified that situation?
Oh, wow. I mean, leaps and bounds. In the early days, um, especially with Apple devices, there were some workarounds, and we would alert parents if their children had disconnected Bark, so at least you would know. But that also doesn't help you in the moment, right? If you're like, great, thank you for letting me know they disconnected it, but now what do I do? So that's another reason why we launched the Bark phone, is
Mm.
because due to Apple's limitations on working with third party platforms, vendors, tech companies, there's only so much we can do because of Apple's policies and ecosystem. They don't let other people into their world because they want to keep it all within the Apple ecosystem. And that would be great if Apple's screen time actually did what it was supposed to do, and it doesn't, but that's probably another episode. So we launched the Bark phone for this reason so that parents could have full control remotely. Kids could not unlink or deactivate anything, and so much control actually that, for example, with an iPhone, a child can take a nude selfie, right? And that media now lives on that device in the iCloud, can be sent to people. But with the Bark phone, if a child goes to take a nude photo or video, it will not save to the device because our algorithm is smart enough to detect that type of media. So, yeah, Bark back in 2015 was baby Bark, and now we're grown up Bark.
It's so interesting because this was another conversation several months back where a mom was saying that her son is being left out of things because all the kids have devices in, and he had just moved to a new school. He was in middle
Oh,
school, and
man.
middle school, new school, and he was having a hard time making plans, really like becoming socially relevant. And she said, um, what are the options? And we went through and we talked about, well, maybe a watch. So now that I know, now that I'm educated and I know what to tell parents, where do they get the Bark devices?
Yeah, so super easy. You can either go to bark.us, that's our website, not bark.com. You'll find dog products. Go to
Mhm.
bark.us for the watchdog for internet safety, or on Amazon. We spend a lot of time there, probably most of us listening and watching. Amazon, you can get the Bark Watch, the Bark Home, the Bark Phone there as well.
You know, something that's interesting. I mean, I've heard the argument and I've heard that kids use this argument too. If you're micromanaging and trying to control me, how am I going to learn the skills to manage myself when I go away to college?
Yeah.
And what I want to say is that when my daughter started driving, there was a device that we found that we could put, they don't make it anymore, unfortunately, but it was a device we could put in her car that sent us a score, like a little report card. We got an email every time she took off in her car, and it would tell us, like, you know, basically like accelerated too quickly, um, all the different things. Like, it would send us a score on her driving, in terms of safety, but it also prevented texting. Like, what she didn't even have to like manage her own texting. There was no texting. And the big gripe with that thing was, she was like, it messes with my app for my music. And I'm like, well, you're fine. You can listen to the radio, you can kick it
You'll
on to
live.
school. Yeah,
Yeah.
but she had that device in her car for 2 years. And then she was 18 and she was going to college, and she didn't, and she was like, I'm ready to listen to my music, I don't text and drive, I'm taking it out. We're like, okay, fine. Well, when it was time for her younger brother to start driving, I said, we have to get that device. And she said, you have to get that device. She said, because what it did was, when I was a new driver, it conditioned me to never hold my phone, text while I'm driving. Like, it literally wouldn't occur to me because I had that early conditioning right when I was a new driver. And I think that's evidence for what Bark and everything that you're trying to help parents do, is that we're just trying to condition them from the onset not to have a problem.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why the title of my book is called Parental Control, because it's tongue in cheek. None of us are ever fully in control of anything. And once you realize that, probably in your 40s, as was with me, um, you start to have a lot more peace. That said, you also have a lot more confidence and clarity on doing what you can do. Also, it's called that because so many of us parents have lost control. We have prioritized being friends with our children versus being their parent first. And so there is that element of, I hear you. You're going to be okay listening to the radio. When you turn 18, we can talk about this again, but it is my job to keep you safe first and foremost. But we can talk about it. We can come up with solutions. And texting while driving is a terrifying thing. I'm thankful that the Bark phone um, will allow parents to detect speed, crash. Um, you can turn off the ability for your child to text when they get in the car. Like we have so many granular settings that are set up to help parents, whether their kid's 10 or 16. But yeah, that's a critical thing is to condition the child to not like shouldn't even have the phone in the front seat with you. Like put it in the back seat.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that it's like the phone grows with them, if
Yes.
right? And so it's like, I think the interesting thing for me to look at, like, it's almost like when you have a kid that, now a lot of people are waiting till eighth, which
Yes.
is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so then let's say, eighth grade, they're getting their devices and they're so happy because there's been so many kids who've had phones since fourth grade. So now
Uh-huh.
they're finally getting a phone. And when they find out this is the option, I'm fine if you don't have a phone. Like, you don't have to have a phone, and I'm fine if you don't have a phone. But
Yeah.
if you'd like a phone, this is your option. It seems so much easier than if you have a kid who already has had an iPhone and
Yeah.
had way too much access because you just didn't know what you didn't know, and now you have to roll it back. Like, what do you want to say about that?
I was that parent who, during the pandemic, let her child, who was not 13 yet, have TikTok and Instagram because he was an only child, and I wanted him to be able to connect with his friends who were already on those platforms. That was a bad idea, bad choice. And in hindsight, I would have not let him have that. I would have just let him get on Zooms with his friends, you know. But hindsight's 2020. So you can, and at that time, after about 6 months of letting my son on the most addictive platform possible, TikTok, I saw a decline in both his mental and physical health. And it was the worst feeling ever because that was my choice to allow it. And I had to talk to him and say, look, I made a mistake. I let you have this. And I now know that it is harmful for you. And I know you might not agree and you want this and it's going to be hard for you, but I'm going to have to shut off this access. I'm sorry. That was my mistake, but I have to do this. And you don't have to like it, but you do have to trust me. So at no point, no matter how much your children fight, do you have to acquiesce. You need to trust your gut and do what's best for your children. You can also find a middle ground. I also could have, at the time, if his mental health wasn't as impacted, could have been like, hey, buddy, I'm starting to see a really concerning trend. It seems like you don't find joy in anything else but TikTok. I see that you're getting on it, at midnight, 2 a.m. when you need to be sleeping. So we're going to implement some time limits so that you can still be on it, but for limited amounts of time during optimal times. So just don't be afraid to do the right thing. Your kid might not like it, but they will appreciate it and respect you, whether it's in a week or in 10 years.
I mean, it's like my daughter said when her younger brother, so she was 20, a little over 20 when he was getting his driver's license, and he's the baby of the family. So we've all raised him and we were all nervous. And she was like, you've got to get him that thing that goes into my car so that
Yes.
from the onset, and I couldn't find it anywhere, but like she was saying, I mean, it wasn't even that long after she was like, even though I hated that thing, even though it messed with the music I wanted to play, even though it conditioned me to be a really good driver and not to be distracted. And she
Yes.
admitted that. So I think that, it's like when you put those boundaries down and have those hard conversations and I like to say to my members, we're not running for homecoming queen. And like you're not going to get voted into the homecoming queen court. There's a really good chance. And if 94% of the time you're coming from a place of yes, 94% of the time you truly are like you're like, how can I help? Like you want to do X, Y, and Z, I'm here for you. That when it comes to the technology and having to put those boundaries down, like they understand, even though they don't like it, they know that you're not just saying no or trying to make life harder for them in all these other areas as well. Like I feel like that it's like what you just said. It's like you must be that parent because your son must. I mean, I'm imagining that was still hard and it was a hard conversation, but I didn't
Oh,
hear you say like it was a nightmare, it was a disaster. He hated my guts. We were at odds. It ruined our relationship. Like you must have had that foundation of building that trust to be able to roll it back like that.
absolutely. I mean, there have been plenty of, I would say, knockdown, drag out interactions around, when he wanted to play Minecraft, and I was like, dude, for real, it's been 3 hours and you're
Hmm.
10. This is not what a 10-year-old body was meant to be doing for this long. So there have been plenty of times that it didn't go as smooth or as logical, but it's so hard. It's not easy. But yeah, we had a foundation of some I would say some unhealthy conflict resolution
Hmm.
and then some healthier like, okay, now I can use science and data to explain to you this is the why, not just because I'm trying to control you or because I think I know everything. It's not about that. It's about what's best for you.
Yeah. Well, let's go into if there's the parent listening to this, and let's just say,
Yes.
I just heard this crazy statistic. I don't know exactly where I heard it. It might have been from Jonathan Haidt in an interview that 40% of 2-year olds have access to their own device.
Yeah.
Um, like, I guess it's in our country because it definitely wouldn't be global. That wouldn't be a global statistic, but yeah, what if you've been raising a kid since they were 2 or 3 or 4 who have had their own device and now you wanna roll it back and they're 11 or 12?
That's a real problem that we really need to address. You need to treat it like an addiction. You need to treat it like they've been smoking cigarettes since then or having unfettered access to sugar. I mean, it's the same part of the brain that's being stimulated. You also don't have to go it alone. Um, do not hesitate to reach out to your child's pediatrician or mental health care provider or therapist or school counselor for some tips on how to do this. Essentially, it's going to be painful. It's not going to be ideal. You've given them a dopamine spiking babysitter pacifier, right? It's not going to be easy. So prepare for the long road. Um, I would say, give or take, about 2 weeks are just going to suck, but you will eventually see the light. You will need to have some strategies in place, a support system, right? So it's not just you and the kid battling it out. Make sure you have other things for them to do, whether it's books, Legos, paint, colors, some outdoor activities planned, pets, friends. You gotta figure out how you're going to replace this highly interactive thing. Um, but eventually, if you stick with it, you will see the benefit. They will detox, and you all will be okay. Now, I am not a doctor, I am not a scientist. So the level at which you need to scale back, whether it's cold turkey or, hey, let's cut our screen time in half, I would defer to a pediatrician or mental health care provider for that level of diagnosis. But the takeaway is it absolutely can be done. It is never too late.
And what about we were, um, if you were trying to roll it back and you have a 15 or 16-year-old? That's, where
Yeah,
this is a kid maybe that's even driving. They're
yeah.
in high school. They have a lot of autonomy. I mean, every one of their friends has a device. Um, and it's like what your son experienced at 11 with being on TikTok for 6 months, but it's like they've just been on it and you have a kid who's I call it notionalizing. Like they're a chronic notionalizer when you walk in and you see all the kids with their face just in the phone. and
Yeah.
they don't even look up. They don't even notice that there's a human being in the room, or they're sitting amongst themselves and everyone's on their device.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they're at that stage of human development where it's, I call it the talk to the hand stage. Like anything you say, um they're going to be combative no matter what. And now on top of it, you want to put down those boundaries. Yeah, what would you say about that? Any tips or?
First of all, I'm right there. That's where I am. I have a 16-year-old. He had had too much access for too long before I knew what I know now. So we're still working on those things. I will also say, because I've had a lot of calm, empathetic conversations with him, he can realize, like, hey, you know what? My mom's right. So there is actually a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with older children and teens where they have enough reason to be like, what my mom or dad is saying is not wrong. I should probably listen to this. But it's about how you approach them. If my son comes to the dinner table facing phone and I'm like, you better get your face out of that phone. That's so disrespectful. I can't, just immediate shutdown. Or if, I touch his shoulder and I'm like, hey, I think you've been on that thing for maybe 6 hours today. We are now going to hang out as a family for the first time all day. It's going to be 20 minutes max of your life. And whatever's happening on that phone, you can get right back to after dinner. Would you mind putting it away? And he'll be like, of course, absolutely. That makes sense. So, do we always have the patience and the wisdom to speak that way to our family? No, but it is effective.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that real life example. Um, so do you think that a 15 or 16-year-old, let's say, and this is an example from a mom. So her 15-year-old, she found out was I don't know, doing, like, she was going on a like kind of a secret device
Mm-hmm.
where, and they had, and they may even have bark. They're pretty on top of it, this family. She's the oldest of four. And so anyway, so she was sneaking on this device, and it was almost like she had like an AI boyfriend. There was some
Oh,
bot app, and she was going on for like hours and hours and hours.
yeah.
And we've cleaned that up.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened, what would you say, like, when you realize that your kid has been sneaking, or they've gotten around whatever, firewalls or whatever you've had in place, and now you really want to, you want to use something like bark where it's going to be more effective, and they're going to have limited access, and you're going to take away these apps and things that they absolutely love, like.
Same thing I would say to any parent who has realized that their children have been hoarding Costco-sized bags of Doritos under their bed and are eating them
Mhm.
overnight. We know that's not the greatest thing for them to be eating at night or in mass quantities. So what do we do there? You got to realize the pull that not only these apps and these screens, but the either real or fake bot-based relationships have on our children. They're real emotions that are being elicited, real neural pathways that are being formed. And so that's why I say you can't go it alone. Um, if you can afford to and have good resources in your community, reach out and do this in conjunction with a trusted healthcare provider, because it is not easy. And sometimes our kids, even though we're like the smartest, coolest parents, don't want to listen to us. An example: when I did allow my son on TikTok at 11, bad idea again, he fell into an algorithm that was showing him images and videos of male teen bodies that were really fit, really cut, but some were like really emaciated. And he became obsessed with the idea of getting like really cut abs, which nothing wrong with wanting to be fit. But when he started to ask me, mom, how many calories do I need to eat a day in order to get this body? I got worried. And despite me going over charts and graphs with him and talking about what your brain needs to grow, it wasn't landing. So we made an appointment. So we made an appointment with his pediatrician, and I just let him know, like, hey, this is what my son has seen. These are the questions that he's asking. I'm going to let you take the lead. And I left the room, and he went over with my son, like, charts of, if you don't eat this much, you want to be, what, 6 feet tall? Okay, you're not going to hit that if you restrict calories. And just hearing it from a different, trusted, respected adult helped make it real for him. So much so that after the appointment, he was like, I'm gonna start eating this and eating more of this, and I'm not gonna look at X, Y, and Z. And I was just like, thank you, God. So yeah, you don't have to do it alone. Lean on trusted healthcare providers, um, but you have to do the work. You can't continue to let your child access the digital drugs that are harming them.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that example and I love that story. And, like you went behind the scenes and you let the pediatrician know, hey, back me up here. And yeah, bringing it in from a third party, I think is so effective. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about regrets. And me and my daughter talk about this because she joins me on this podcast a lot. And so we can kind of lift the veil and she can speak from the kid perspective of this was what was going on and this was what she now realizes she probably needed. So I held off on social media and I didn't allow her to have Snapchat in when she got a device in when she went to middle school. She got a phone when she went to middle school. I said no social media, no Snapchat. She was the only girl in all of her middle school. For 3 years, I had to hear that she was the only girl without Snapchat. Well, in eighth grade, I decided to let her have Instagram. And so I said, I'm not willing to do Snapchat, but I'll compromise and I'll let you do Instagram. And now what she says is, you know, Instagram, where she went down a toxic, rabbit hole was she was late to, I don't know if she'd love me saying this, but whatever. She was late to, like develop and go through puberty.
Yeah.
And she went down that rabbit hole and it lasted for years
Mm.
of women's bodies and Victoria's Secret models
Oh gosh.
and so this girl who literally had just been, she played hard, tomboy, athletic, like her hair looked like a rat's nest until she was 9 years old. Like she was a fully alive little feral child. And then all of a sudden, all that, it's like all that was sort of undone when she started scrolling and seeing all these images and comparing herself. And
Yes.
it really messed with her body image.
I'm really grateful that you brought that up because that's something that is not addressed enough when we're seeing things about how social media is bad for kids. The disordered eating related content that children are served, and it's not just disordered eating, it's the comparison trap, the FOMO, the filters, at a time where their bodies are the most awkward that they will probably be ever, right? You're going to have acne, you're going to have stretch marks, you're going to have cellulite, they're going to have fat in new places that you didn't have before. Your teeth are not going to be the brightest white without some help. I mean, it's ridiculous. And to have your sense of self-worth and confidence largely impacted by followers and likes and engagement and comments, and it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. I mean, so tell us about this new book and how you're going to help everyone. How you're gonna help us all figure it out.
I'm gonna try. So yeah, parental control, obviously tongue-in-cheek title, is the book I wish I would have had, 10 years ago when I had, gosh, a 6-year-old. Excuse me. I the number one thing I didn't have back then that I have now is confidence.
Mm.
Confidence to do what I thought was right for my child, despite every other influence and signal telling me otherwise. Um, Confidence that even though the world is saying, do this, go here, be here, that something didn't feel right and I needed to pay attention to that and lean into that. And not only that, but be a leader, be outspoken. If I'm at a play date with a bunch of moms and all the kids are just on their Nintendo Switch for 2 hours, like somebody be a parent and say something. Like our kids are together right now. They need to play, not
Hmm.
on screens. Don't be afraid to say that. Like, sure, there might be some moms that give you a side eye or whatever, or think you're judging them. Whatever, get over it. Life is too short to care too much what other people think if you're doing the right thing. So it'll help give you the confidence to be the parent that you are feeling like you need to be. It'll help you give your children, some guidance, some age appropriate guidance for here's why I'm saying we need to live like this, instead of just coming down with the iron hammer of like, we're going to do this and blah. It'll give you, science and data, much like Jonathan Haidt's book really went deep on science and data. I'd say you can never have enough data. So giving you some research to support the why behind the things that I'm suggesting, giving you resources and advice, not just bark stuff, but all kinds of stuff: websites, resources, webinars, documentaries, free tools that come with a lot of the connected tech that you already let your children access. So there's a lot in there for what to do, why to do it, and how to do it. And on top of that, I also share my personal story. I was born in 1980, and I grew up in a time that was obviously much different than this. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and bulimia and a few other things in a time where I didn't have digital access. And so um, I am grateful for those experiences now, because having lived some really tough things as a child and now understanding the digital world and how those dangers can be exacerbated by the digital world, I think helped me to make it very real for parents that it absolutely could happen to any one of their children within the walls of their safe home that they're raising them in if they give them unfettered access to the internet. So here's what to do about it.
You know, that documentary that featured you, Childhood 2.0.
Yeah.
So I watched that a while back and I recommended it to my groups. And one of the moms who has a 14-year-old daughter who they've been going through some hard times for the last 2 years, um, they watched it together.
Mm.
And she said, like, she's like, it just made my job easier, and I love what you said about um explaining the why, you
Yeah.
know like kids are actually like pretty logical and reasonable. And look, when we give them a bunch of rules and we try to instill boundaries, kids need boundaries. We all hear it, really, you need to give them structure, you need to give them boundaries. And yet when you put down these boundaries, when you have more rules, they're going to do what human beings naturally do. They're going to resist them. And so when you are having conversations, before you're not just laying down the hammer, you're having conversations and explaining the why. Like you even said it earlier, it's like my job is to keep you safe, and
Yeah.
and that's exactly what I mean by the I'm not running for homecoming queen. Like I'm not, it's like if you imagine being in high school yourself, you're like, okay, there is no drinking. I saw you slip some, alcohol in that punch. Well, guess what? If that was your job and that was what you stood for, the other kids weren't going to like you very much, but maybe you may have saved one of the other kids from getting into a car crash. Right. And so that kid that maybe nobody liked when we were in high school, that was the one who was doing the right thing and tattling on all the other kids like me and maybe you who were doing the wrong things. And so we hated those kids. But
Right.
now we're not kids anymore. Now we're the parent. And so it's like we have to give ourselves permission to get over what we like. No, the cool mom, that whole Amy Poehler character from Mean Girls, like nobody wants to be that. I mean, it's a ridiculous character, and yet there's so many parents who are trying to be the cool mom, and your kids, even though they might love that they don't have the rules that other kids have, they're actually embarrassed I've seen it over and over again.
Yeah.
They end up being embarrassed that their mom tries so hard to be the cool mom.
It's so cringe,
Yeah,
as
it is.
the kids say.
Yeah.
They want boundaries. They need boundaries. They may not like the boundaries initially, but they want them and they need them. And you are not doing your job as a parent if you have none of them. You are doing your child a disservice. And the coolest thing you can do is make sure they are healthy physically and mentally. And no child can argue with that. They will try, and you can listen to them. You can hear everything they have to say, but you can't like lean on the data, lean on the data. You know, oh, I want to be on screens till 12. Okay, I hear you. I do too. But if your body doesn't get 8 hours of sleep at your age, here are the bad things that are going to happen. So I'm not a good parent if I acquiesce. You can also model what I don't think we've talked about yet is telling, combo, combo, combo. But if you're on this thing, right, while you're talking to them, it's not going to land. If you are, always scrolling when you're with your spouse or partner or friends, they're going to see that. If you charge your phone beside your bed at night and are always picking it up in the middle of the night and not sleeping, if you're constantly trying to get the perfect family photo so you can post it to the gram, they are going to see that. You've got to model as well.
Well, I love that. Guess what human beings hate? We hate hypocrisy. We do. And our kids are no different. So if we're telling them, get off your phone, get off your phone, get off your phone. And my youngest called me out on this. He didn't
Yeah.
have a phone yet, but he was in 4th grade and he said, "Could you not pick me up on Tuesdays when you have your call because it's kind of a big, like I don't like it. If I get in the car and then I have to be quiet because you're on your call that happens every Tuesday, can you just like get me a ride with someone else or send, Papa to come and pick me up?" And
Yeah.
it was a wake up call, which was like, yeah, if I'm saying people come before technology, that's not catchy, but a mantra that's always been around in our family. People come before technology. Like if there's a human being that's in your presence that wants to interact with you, you don't choose a device over that human being.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I mean, and that was the rule, and it was a consistent rule. It was the rule at the dinner table. It was rule in the car when they got their devices. And so he called me. He'd heard me using all of my lingo and the rules with his older brother and sister who had devices, and he called me out on that hypocrisy. And guess what? I stopped attending those Tuesday calls
Yeah.
and made other arrangements for my call because it was a priority because I wanted to pick my kid up from school. So I 100% agree about that, about modeling. We hate, like, don't tell me what to do if you're not doing it.
Exactly. I literally just wrote down in my little like, keep it all together Titania journal. Humans over tech.
Yep.
Randy. Like it is what it is. You can't
It
argue with it.
Yeah, like we're and it is interesting because I was out to dinner with my older 2 kids. My daughter was in town. We're having like a nice sushi dinner at one of those like, fancy sushi places. And where you kind of dine and they bring you the courses and what is it called? Omakase, where you don't really,
Yes.
yeah, it's the best. It's so
Yeah.
indulgent and ridiculous. And anyway, so we were having this nice meal and I said to them, it's so nice that like I don't even have to say anything to y'all. And there's no phones even face down on the table. There's no phones hidden in your lap. Like you guys are now at an age where you're just on autopilot.
Yeah.
And we started having a conversation and my son, who's now 27, he was 26 at the time, he said, "You don't understand that people don't even realize. Like you go
No.
out to dinner," he said, "and it is the norm that every single person has their phone and most of them don't even put it face down. It's just face up." And he said,
Mm-mm.
and it's just not on people's radars. They just never even learned that that's rude behavior. Like he goes, look, I have a couple of friends who also never learned to chew with their mouth closed, which that's a whole other topic. He said, but like, they're not learning. Like basic manners. It's rude to have a phone on the table when you're out to dinner with other people and socializing.
Yeah. I mean, the more we can normalize, model that behavior, it will become mainstream. We're so early in this.
Hmm.
We're so early in this. We're kind of still like back in the day where like pregnant women used to drink and smoke.
Yep.
Like that used to be a normal thing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now it seems wild.
Yeah. Well, okay. So your book just came out. Um, and where can people get it? We will link to it in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, again, shout out to Amazon.
Hmm.
Here at my house all the time. And you now carry my book, so thank you. BarnesandNoble.com as well sells it. Still waiting for it to get in stores there because I would love to host some meetups and just talks, But for now, I'd say Amazon's the best bet.
And what about, do you have an audio version?
Yes, I am actually next week going to the studio to record the audiobook, and it should be live in July of 25.
Good.
Yeah.
You have a great voice. I'm glad you're narrating it.
Oh, thank you. I was so honored. I pitched it and I was like, we'll see, and they were like, okay. And I was like, yes. So
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. Most of the parents in my community, they listen to books like this more than they read them.
Same.
Hmm.
Same. Audible is one of my favorite apps. I just finished Chelsea Handler's book. I'll have what she's having. And I was just like, oh, yes. Now I want to go to Mallorca.
I've read every Chelsea Handler book. I'm so
Mhm.
glad and I haven't read that one yet. So thank you
Oh.
for putting that in my ear.
It's the best one so far.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her. I love
She's
her.
the best.
She's the best. She's the best.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for writing this. Thank you for being a part of the Bark team and, being so early. I mean, like I said, I'm like parenting in the digital age. I mean, we're cowboys. Like this is the wild, wild west. And, we don't know how to do this. We're just trying to figure it out. And so, thank you for being a part of something so important to try and make it easier for all of us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the impact in the community that you have made and you have built. And it's just an honor to have spent this time with you and here for you or your community anytime.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye until next time. Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you picked up some tips, tools, maybe some baby steps for creating more balance and boundaries in your life. And I just wanted to let you know, if you want to continue moving the needle forward in creating this for yourself, having a happier household, I want you to go to my website and check out mastermindparenting.com. We have 3 beginning programs, and if you need some accountability and more support, then please look for the one that would be a good fit for you. And as always, we're on all the social channels under Mastermind Parenting. On Instagram, it's mastermind_parenting. And periodically I do pop up on different Instagram lives, Facebook lives, where I give you teaching and coaching, and I love engaging with you live to help you help your strong-willed kids so that they can feel better, because when they feel better, they do better. And I love, love, love getting to know you guys. So thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Super, super appreciative.